button on.
Cool.
Okay. So yeah, you went to the I didn't see you in the video, but I know I saw your message. You were at the talk that I gave with what's the name of the boot camp?
Brain station, yeah.
Brain Station Boot Camp.
Yeah.
And you had some follow-up questions about career and things of that nature.
Yeah, I'm actually one of the teaching assistants in the web
Oh,
development
okay.
program. Yeah, at Brain Station. I had done the boot camp myself. I graduated in July, and then I was selected for one of the teaching assistant roles, which
Nice.
is what I've been doing for the past 3 months. And then the contract actually.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. The contract actually ends like on October 5th, which is I've been starting my job search for like the past like 3 weeks. And the last time like I had to search for a job was like a couple years ago. I would say like pre-COVID. So I think the job market and like how people apply to jobs and like how the interview process goes and everything has like changed a bit, not to mention I made a career switch like into something else, right? So
Right. Into being a teaching assistant.
well, into a software engineer. So that's like
Oh,
my
okay.
ultimate,
Got you.
yeah, ultimate goal. I have yet to land like I guess my first official role as a
Mhm.
software engineer. But yeah, that was the reason why I went to the boot camp. So
Okay. That makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, so that was like a little bit about me previously, though I had like some experience in finance. That was what I was doing before I decided to make the career switch.
Nice.
Um,
What was your role and company?
yeah, so I was working with the government of Canada.
Oh,
I think you're not Canadian, right? You're in the US.
yeah, I'm in the US.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I was working for the government as a payment services officer. So that's kind of like in accounting.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Like an
yeah, in
accountant?
accounting. Yeah, well, I was an accountant at it's like a healthcare company called Centric Health. I was there for like 4 years, and then when I moved to work for the government, it wasn't exactly an accountant role, but it was still like finance related. But yeah, so I've always had like an analytical background, and then I've had like a creative background where I've had some time as like a graphic design lead, and then some time as a published wedding cake artist.
Nice.
So that's where I kind of like discovered programming is like in between like my analytical side and creative side. I feel like they mesh together pretty well. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I actually, so you had mentioned in your talk about hackathons being like a really great like experience point and stuff. So I love doing hackathons. We had one that we did in Brain Station, but on my
Hey,
own, like, outside of Brain Station, I think this was like maybe 2 weekends ago now. I had gone to an Amazon and Hackathons International hackathon, and then my team
sponsored by
actually,
Amazon?
yeah, sponsored by Amazon, yeah.
That's
Um,
perfect.
and my team actually won first place. Um,
Hey,
yeah, it
let's
was really good.
go.
Yeah, it was really fun. And it was really competitive actually because there were like 250 people there. So it was intense, but
Right.
yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah. And it's even better that it's like sponsored by Amazon. So it has
Yeah,
like, other companies will see that and be like, oh, you went to a Amazon hackathon and you won and sponsored by Amazon. So yeah.
yeah. So I put that on my resume first thing the next
Okay.
day. Yeah.
So I guess to be just so I can make the best use of your time, how
Yeah.
can I best help you? Like what would you like to achieve out of this meeting?
So I was just wondering, like, because I feel like I might be a bit all over the place, like trying to do too many things at once. But I want to know, like, what do you think for somebody on my path without a traditional, CS degree, who just can't graduated from a boot camp? What's probably like the best path for me to, I guess, land my first role? And I'll give you even a little bit more background of what I've currently been doing. Like, I'm sure you've heard of like Algo Expert.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I'm doing that because in the boot camp they didn't really teach us data structures and algorithms. So
Hmm.
I've been like supplementing my learning regarding that using like Algo Expert. And then, like I mentioned, I'm also doing like other things like hackathons and stuff to network and also get some experience.
Hmm.
I've actually just today started with a startup as a volunteer though,
Okay.
as a full stack software engineer, where I'm basically like learning a new tech stack and everything. So I feel like this will help me get some experience as well that I'll be able to put onto my resume. But yeah, I'm just wondering, like, is that a good direction to be going in, like focusing on the data structures and algorithms, and I guess just putting more time in experience wise?
Yeah. So oh, do you happen to have headphones, just because I can hear my audio come back
Oh,
through it?
yeah, let me
Yeah.
see.
But as you
Oh,
look though,
actually, sorry, my headphones are just in the other room. If you don't mind, I'll just
oh,
run and grab them quick.
okay, yeah, no problem. I'll
Okay,
wait.
sorry about that. Is that better?
Yes, a whole lot better.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so yeah, so where was I? Basically, you're. I'm sorry. Could you? Where were we again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was just telling you a bit about what I was doing to kind of prepare to land my first software engineering role.
Okay.
And if I was maybe, I guess, doing too much, or if there's something key that I'm missing that I'm not doing enough of.
Right. So yeah, and you said you're doing algo expert and hackathons. Okay. So I guess I would start by asking, have you been applying to jobs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many have you applied to?
So far, I've applied to about 50. And to give you some more context, the first like 40 jobs that I've applied to, it was like cold applying. So just sending out my resume, not really getting in touch with an actual person and everything. At
Hmm.
that point as well, I had like, I guess, my first official version of my resume after switching careers. And I didn't get any interviews. Then
Okay.
I thought I
Or
was like doing,
callbacks? What about callbacks?
yeah, no callbacks, nothing. So I was like, okay, the problem has to be with my resume. So I contacted a senior software engineer, and she took a look over my resume. She basically tore it apart, like you actually said in your talk, like like moved everything around on your resume,
Hmm.
and she like fixed it up for me. The 10 places that I have applied to afterwards now, I got interviews with 2 of them. I actually have an interview
Nice.
tomorrow. Yeah.
Nice.
So
And that was recently?
yeah, so I had one interview, I think last week, and then one interview tomorrow.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it looks like those changes helped a lot.
Yeah.
I would so yeah, it sounds so 2 for 10 on interviews. That's not bad. That's pretty good, I would say. For cold call emails, I guess. Or
Yeah.
cold call job applications.
Yeah.
Um so I would, for one, keep interviewing. I mean, keep applying to jobs. Like, always be applying to jobs. You could even set a certain amount per day, like maybe 5 a day or something like that. Like, because there's so many jobs out there that go unfilled. I would keep applying to jobs. So maybe 5 a day, or maybe you do it on a weekly cadence or whatever. Maybe you take a Saturday to do your jobs, like 5 times 7 or whatever, and
Right.
keep applying. And then hopefully you should get more interviews. Now, if you're seeing that you're not getting any interviews for jobs that you've applied to, maybe that might be saying something to your resume, not being a good indicator of the talents that you have. But it sounds like you are getting some traction with your resume. That being said, I would continue developing on your resume. So you're doing hackathons, you're doing that volunteering thing with that startup. I would
Yeah.
continue upgrading your resume. Like, really, your resume is a living document. You don't just upgrade it once and then you're done. No, like, you keep updating it as long as you're on the job search, because every single day you should be, improving on this skill or doing this, doing that. So you do win a hackathon, put that on your resume. And each project, quote unquote, on your resume should kind of look like a job, because really these projects are to supplement where you don't have real working experience, like paid working experience. So
Right.
you do this volunteer position. I might put that as a job. I might put that as I mean, some people get a little, like, some recruiters get a little, like, they might think it's disingenuous to put it as a job because you're not getting paid for it. But I think I might put it as a job, and then maybe you could say like volunteer software engineer or something along those lines, just so it comes off as earnest. Like, I'm not trying to deceive anyone, but I do have this experience, and then you could start saying, okay, like as a part of this role as a software engineer, I did this, that, and you'll be updating that the longer you work there. So let's say you're there for like 2 months before you get a job, or before you get the interview with the certain company that just might hire you. You should have 2 months of projects and stuff like that that you did at that place. And then you could talk about that in the interview. So I would say that resume is a living document. I would say keep applying to jobs because you're getting some traction. And then at that point, once you're applying to jobs, you're getting your foot in the door at certain places for an interview, then it's just about passing. So you have that one that happened last week, you said, and one coming up.
Yep.
Each of those are potential, jobs, right? So you just need
Yeah.
to pass them. You're doing the algo expert. Have you been seeing that, like on the last interview, are you getting a call back from them on the next round, or did they stop?
So what happened with the last one, I feel like that one was an anomaly because I originally went in applying for a junior engineer role. And then
Hmm.
once they had brought me into the actual interview, like on the Zoom call, they were like, we just heard this morning, we finished hiring for our junior roles. So we're going to be interviewing you for an intermediate role. So they gave me like a harder
Mm.
interview. And basically I got 2 out of 3 of the questions on that interview. So they didn't want to
That's
move
not bad.
forward.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they didn't want to move forward, but they said when we're hiring for junior roles again, we'll give you a call. So I guess it's like
Okay.
a good connection to have.
Great connection to have. Little tip, every job, full-time job that I've had after college, they rejected me at some point in time. So Etsy rejected
Oh,
me the first time, and then I think 6 months later they hit me back up and put me through the process. Amazon, I probably got rejected from them at least once for an internship, once for full-time, and then end of last year I was able to get in. So I wouldn't take rejection as like a complete rejection. Like it's a rejection for now. And then they might be hitting you up and maybe, really asking you for an interview. Maybe at that time you're like, oh no, I'm good. I don't want this anymore. So
yeah.
I take it as that. But on the next interview, like how do you feel in general prepared for technical interviews?
In terms of technical interviews, I'm still working on the data structures and algorithm stuff. I'm not 100% on it. At the same time, given that I'm not currently applying to any like enterprise level companies, like FANG companies and stuff like that. So I know that the roles that I am currently applying for aren't going to test me so heavily on data structures and algorithms.
Mm,
What they will test me on, like vanilla JavaScript and React, I do feel very confident on.
okay.
And the role that I'm interviewing for tomorrow is one of those. Even the interview tomorrow, it's actually just a phone screen, so there's nothing technical about this one yet. But
Okay.
yeah, for like if I were to proceed to a technical interview with them, it would be like React and JavaScript, which I'm very comfortable with.
Um, how do you know that? Did they tell you that?
Yeah, their tech stack is React, and they did tell me their their technical interview is normally with React or some vanilla JavaScript.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's good then. Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily just because a company is not like enterprise or FANG or whatever, that they won't give you a data structure algorithm question because
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
yeah, I see that, pretty much everywhere. But I will say that it kind of varies. Like some companies might give you a technical interview, kind of like the one that you're going to get with they're testing you on can you contribute to the code stack now? And I think those type of interviews, have their own challenges, but I think most often companies, even the smaller ones, are kind of copying the FANG, where they'll give you a data structure algorithm question, and it just might not be as hard. Like if you look at Leak Code, they have a bunch of questions from past people who've interviewed at certain companies before,
Yep.
and they rank them easy, medium, hard. So maybe
Mhm.
like a startup or a mid-sized company might ask you an easy, medium level question versus like a medium, hard level question that a FANG might ask you. But I would still prepare myself for that, even if you're doing a mid or startup level type company.
Right, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, I would also say I don't know, how good are you with behavioral questions? I mean, you come from a non-technical background, so I'm
Yeah, I feel pretty confident with behavioral
confident with those.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's also something pretty important. More usually more people with like maybe CS degrees may have a little bit more trouble with the behavioral side of things than the technical side of things. But both are important. Like at Amazon, I know they do like they definitely care about the technical side of things and will ask like a medium hard level question, but they do put a big emphasis on the behavioral side, like how much do you care about the companies, its values, um all all
The,
that stuff.
the leadership principles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, the leadership principles.
Yeah.
Actually in their interviews they spend like a good 15 to 20 minutes just on the leadership principles in every
Right.
interview I've been in with Amazon. um
How
let's
many
see.
rounds of interviews did you have with Amazon to
With
get that
Amazon,
role?
yeah, I had a technical screening, which was like a code test. I had a one-on-one phone call with which was also a technical interview. And then I had was it four? I think it was 4 or 5. I'm pretty sure it was 4. I think it was like 3 technicals and then 1 system design, or maybe it was 2. It was like somewhere between 3 and 5. I don't know
Okay.
exactly, but I
Yeah.
know that at least one of them was a system design question, and then the rest were regular technical interview questions.
Okay. And
Mhm.
then I guess within those interviews, they threw in some behavioral questions.
Yeah, like we spent the first half. It was either the first half or second half on the system design on the leadership principles. So they might ask you. I actually had some notes on it somewhere. Um, like if you like look at each of their leadership principles, they might ask you a question like describe a time where you had to I don't know, disagree and commit with someone, or describe a
Right.
time where insert behavioral or insert leadership principle where you had to demonstrate this and tell us about it. And they might ask follow-ups based on that, whatever your answer
Right.
is.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, well, thank you. That sounds like really solid advice. Had another question regarding AWS because that's something
Hmm.
that I will be learning Amplify specifically for this volunteer role that I'm starting. Um,
AWS Amplify.
yeah, AWS Amplify.
Okay.
But then I also was going to get started with the AWS Certified Developer certification. Would you say that that's like how heavily of an importance would you put on something like that? Because and the reason why I bring that up is because going through all the job applications, like the job ads that I've seen so far, I would say like 95% of them or more say like have some experience with AWS.
You know, I I don't know, because this is what I like. I'm, maybe a mid-level, senior level engineer. And I mean, I guess now I know AWS, but even before I started working at Amazon, recruiters would hit you up for jobs, and I know I don't hit every single qualification on it. So I don't think it's very important for you to hit all the qualifications. Usually it's like a nice to have, but
Right.
I would still like, if I were in your position, or this is when I was in your position, I was
Yeah.
applying to any job that was like, maybe years of experience. Like if they're saying, oh, we need 8 years of experience and you have none, then maybe I wouldn't apply to that.
Yeah.
But if they said something like 2 to 3 years of experience and I just graduated from college and, whatever, like I'm still applying. So I wouldn't even worry too much about the specific technology or whatever, because I mean, this personal opinion, I looked at the applying, especially cold applying, as like a numbers game, which is why I'm like, okay, try to hit 5 a day, a certain amount per week. Um, Specifically to Amazon, at least, I didn't know any AWS at all, and they hired me, but they didn't ask about AWS on the interview, and I would be surprised, I would be stunned if even an AWS Amazon team was asking the people they were interviewing about AWS, because AWS is like AWS is a whole suite of tools. There's like there's literally hundreds and hundreds of tools within AWS, Lambda,
Right.
DynamoDB, Redshift, this, that. Like no one's gonna know every single tool. I mean, let me not say no one, but most engineers, even engineers who work at AWS or just Amazon in general, don't know how to use every single tool, right?
Right.
Usually the more important thing, in my opinion, and I think most engineering managers might agree, is just your problem solving ability. And, you know, like I know Amazon will hire you without knowing any AWS. Now, maybe some niche startup that's like, we need you to contribute now, especially like as a mid-level engineer, senior engineer, they might want you to know like, okay, AWS Lambda, AWS DynamoDB, because that's what they built their stuff with. But most big companies, mid-sized companies, they're not too specific on the specific technology that you know, because chances are they have their own suite of technologies. For example, let's say there's an engineer who's worked at Google for 10 years, right? They're not going to have any experience with AWS because they've used GCP more likely than not, Google Cloud Platform, their entire
Right.
career. But this Google engineer knows how to solve problems, right? You give them any generalized algorithm question, data structure question, they know general techniques, they know system design, they could talk about streaming versus this approach, trigger-based approach versus X, Y, and Z. So they know general problems, they know general solutions that have worked in the past. They have a bevy of experiences that could apply to any company's suite of problems, which is why even these companies that might say, oh, we need someone who knows AWS, we need someone who knows this, and that, they'll still reach out to that Google engineer with 10 years of experience because they know how to solve problems. So I wouldn't put too much thought on the specific nitty-gritty nice to haves and all that in the job description, because chances are, like, if they find the right candidate, they're not gonna be thinking of, like, if they could get a Google engineer, let's say some startup company could get a Google engineer who's been working for 10 years to leave Google to come work at that startup. They're not thinking about, oh, they don't know the AWS Lambda tool out of the 300 tools that AWS has. They're gonna be like, we can get this Google engineer, we can train him to do this. If they do good on the interview, if they, you know, understand the algorithms and data structures, this is and that, they look like they'd be a cool person to work with. You know, they listen to criticisms when they're designing their solution. In the interview, they, you know, can talk well about their experiences in the past, then they're going to hire that, like more likely than not, they're going to hire that person.
Right.
So yeah. And in terms of learning technologies, I always say this, and people have told me this because when I was younger, I was also doing this, and you'll see this a lot. Like if you go to hackathons, you'll see like, you know, younger people usually that they know every technology, right? They know React, they know Redux, they know everything, right?
Yeah.
But they haven't been doing it for that long. So that
Right.
means there's no way you can know it that well.
Right.
And I think most engineering managers, most senior people kind of pick up on that. Like one of the biggest traps I think people get into is breadth over depth, right? They'll try to learn as many technologies as possible to cover the widest, to cast the widest net in terms of like, you know, job descriptions and things like that, because this job might say, oh, GCP, da 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 da, AWS, da 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 da, you know, Microsoft Azure and all that stuff. And they'll say, okay, I'm gonna learn everything so then I can apply to all these jobs, but then they're not really good at any one thing. And then when you interview them and talk about their projects, like it's very easy to tell if someone is really experienced with a certain technology versus not. So like you, for example, right? It sounds like you've been working with JavaScript, React, and such from
Right.
the boot camp. You learned that at the boot camp, and maybe you've done some projects with it at a startup. I think that is more valuable of an experience than someone who knows Angular, AWS, this, that, like every framework, but has only used it on maybe one project or half a
Right.
project where they were just contributing to someone else's project.
Right.
So that's my opinion on that, and I feel like most managers and senior level engineers would agree with me, but yeah, take what you will from that.
Yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense. And that actually kind of relieves a little bit of pressure off of me, because I did feel at one point like I was trying to spread myself too thin and juggle too many things. So yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I think best advice is like focus on the problem. Like usually that's, I don't know, when I've gotten interviewed, especially from those like top companies, they're more curious about, like, I know Amazon Access, and it might be one of their leadership principles. Let me see if I can find it. Principles. I think here, Amazon. Yeah, Amazon's leadership principles here. Let me share my screen real quick. Just to, and I'm not like trying to advocate. I mean, Amazon's cool. I'm not trying to be their, biggest fan, but
That's okay.
let's see. Let's see. All right, a lot. Hire and develop the best. There's one about hard problems, I feel like. Okay, maybe there's not one about it, like ownership, customer session, but they're big on difficulty of the problem that you're solving. Like I remember during my interviews, they asked me a lot about like, tell me about one of the most difficult problems that you've had to solve and tell me how you went about doing it. So actually this might be it. Invent and simplify. Let me see, difficult, hard. Okay, I can't find anything on it. But I think one of these kind of is similar to this idea of having a super complex problem and being able to break it down in a simple and easy way for other people to understand. And those type of problems, I think I was watching a video about it, like Google has that standard too, where they don't just want someone who can write like super fancy code or anything like that. They want someone who can take a really difficult problem and use a very simple solution to solve it.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, hopefully, I mean, I got the chance to speak to a couple Amazon recruiters at that hackathon. I guess like I kind of had the spotlight for a bit because we won first place. So they wanted to speak to me, but then I did let them know. I was completely transparent with them because they were like, why don't you come apply? And I said, I'm not 100% on my data structures and algorithms yet. I know I need a little bit more time. So they said, no worries, like don't waste your time applying if you know you're not fully confident with it. They said, go in and apply like once you know you are ready. And then I inquired about front end engineer roles for the time being. What would you say? Do you know much about the front end? Would you say that an interview with Amazon front end engineer would test as much data structures and algorithms like for right now?
Yeah. I'm not super sure about that. I think I feel as just an opinion, I'm thinking that every role at Amazon would try to test you to be a good, like at Amazon, they have like front end engineer and stuff like that, but those are all like, they map to the SDE role. So like, let's say you're a machine learning engineer, you're still an SDE. Let's say you're a backend engineer, you're still an SDE. So from what I've seen, at least, Amazon's usually trying to test for good SDEs, and then you can kind of, maybe you specialize in front end or specialize in back end or machine learning. But it seems like they want good SDEs. I don't know all the information about this. But I would be stunned if you went through an SDE interview circuit and didn't get algorithms and data structures questions from Amazon, at least, or any of the FANG companies. I would like really be stunned. Because even as a front-end engineer, you like, it's not like you don't need to know data structures and algorithms, like, because you use that stuff on the front end as well.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, yeah, thank you. I think I got some really good clarity here. I'm gonna keep working at my data structures and algorithms. I am getting better at them day by day, slowly but surely.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And
you'll never be perfect at them. Like it'll always be a struggle. Like with me, I passed interviews, I failed a whole bunch of interviews, And yeah, it's just practice.
Yeah. In the interviews that you did go through with like the bigger companies, Amazon included, the time, like how were the technical questions? Like, did they give you 1 or 2 technical questions in the interview to solve over like an hour or two? Was it like that?
Yeah, it usually depends, right? So let's say you get one interview question and you're, hitting, on all cylinders. Usually they'll try to give you things to improve on it, like, okay, can we get a better time? Or they might tweak the question, like, what if we did this? How would your solution change? Or something like that. I did do a Google interview before where they gave me they were like, yo, I have 2 questions for you during this hour, but let's see if we can get to it. Maybe Bloomberg did that too. It depends, but usually they're in a technical interview is like an hour tops. So
Right.
if like in Amazon's case, they spend like a good chunk of it on leadership principles. So they might not have enough time to ask you 2 full like medium level lead code type questions. So they might
Okay.
ask you one and one ... depending on how far you get in it.
Okay.
Yeah, but that might change between Google, Facebook, yada yada yada. Depending on how they want to use that 1 hour. Also, it's depending on how well you do. So if you're not like, let's say like, just because if you only do one, that doesn't mean you're necessarily doing bad, but maybe you just explain a little bit more or whatever. But I would say like, let's say you get to the second interview question and you finish that, then maybe they might ask you a third, because just to take up the time. So or maybe they might ask another caveat on that second question. Who knows?
Okay, right. And then, so I've heard this like a whole bunch of times, like from so many different people, but I'm
Mhm.
wondering how true it is, to what degree, when you're in the interview. I was told speak your way through the problem, like what you're thinking, what you're
100%.
doing. So like really take that all the way and do that.
I take that. I literally think out loud. Like
Yeah, okay.
yeah, like pretend. And I think a good way to approach this is think of it as pair programming, right? Like if
Oh.
let's say you're just pair programming with your friend, right? Or you're at a boot camp. Let's say you're
Mhm.
working on a project with your friend and they're sitting right next to you and
Yeah,
you're just doing stuff on the computer. You need to do as if they don't know, like they don't know what you're thinking. So if you're
right.
pair programming, you're going to say everything you're doing out loud. Like, okay, I'm writing this method to do this. Okay, I'm gonna X is equal to, maybe I'm gonna add the 2 numbers. So, and I'm gonna divide it. So I'm gonna do 1 + 2 is da da da. And then I'm gonna set another variable, because you want them to be engaged, right? Because really, honestly, like when I've interviewed in the past, sometimes it's like an interview can get boring sometimes. And if you're interviewing a candidate and it's silent, you might doze off, like, the camera's on your face, but I have like my phone in my hand. Like I might be on my phone looking at, oh, okay, what do you need? Oh, yeah. Like you want to keep them engaged, maybe you might even say like, oh yeah, I think like, just think of ways to kind of include them in the process, because it's really a code, like the technical interview. I think my best comparison is that it's a pair programming session where you're the lead in the pair programming session.
Okay.
So yeah, I think about it like that.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. Okay,
Yeah, and
cool.
over communication is better than under communication. So I'd elect to over communicate and maybe have them tell you, no, that's too much. Like you can relax, but
Right.
I don't think you're gonna get. I mean, this is what I do personally. Like I over communicate, and I'll tell them everything I'm thinking. Like, oh, I'm gonna write this test just because. And then sometimes they might interrupt you and say, oh no, actually, maybe you don't need to focus on that. Maybe you could focus on this, because I think this needs more attention. Or because when you keep them involved, then they're probably more likely to help you out on something. Like let's say I don't know, I'm like kind of struggling with this thing or whatever. They might be more willing to butt in and say, give a little tidbit, not necessarily help you, but
Yeah.
give you some feedback, or I don't know, or maybe I should look this up. Yeah, you can go ahead and look it up. Like they might say, add that into the conversation, as opposed to
Okay.
if you're just doing stuff, and thinking in your head, they can't really contribute.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's really good. I think that's one of the things that I have to work on, I guess, when because I do my practice questions, like I'm just alone. So I like practice them kind of silently, but I guess to get that practice, I'll like speak it out loud while I'm doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
And
cool.
I also offer mock technical interviews. So we could do a session where we just I come with my own question to ask you for a mock technical interview, and it'll be on like Leak
Oh,
Code or
okay.
something like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe when I'm a bit more ready, I'll ask you for one of the sessions. Okay,
Sounds
thank
good.
you. Okay, yeah, so continue with the data structures and algorithms. You said keep applying to jobs, and then keep iterating like on my resume. How soon? So I like literally today was technically my first day on this volunteer software engineering role. How like do you think, I mean, this is the first day, so like do you think it's too soon to just already add that to my resume? Like when would you add that? Like after the first week?
You could add it now, but you're not going to have any bullet point. I would add it now. I would add it as soon as like I try to overdo it. So I'd add it
Okay.
as soon as it's real. Like you can actually talk about it. Like, yes, I just started, and I would put the date, of course. So
Yeah.
you start in September. I'd say, oh yeah, I started September 2022, and then
Right.
I'd add bullets as often as I do something. So if you check
Okay.
my LinkedIn, and I don't post out, like I'm not actively recruiting necessarily.
Right.
But if you check my LinkedIn, I have Amazon. I have a couple of the projects I've done over the last year, basically, or 6-7 months. And I try to keep it updated semi-regularly, just so that when I need to update it, I don't just like, oh, wait, what was I working on the past 2 years, 3 years, or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, yeah, I will do that. Thank you so much, Chuma. I really appreciate it. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate all your advice, and I will hit you up for one of those mock interviews later.
Yeah, no problem. And I also recently wrote this article on resumes for software engineers. Maybe you could compare it against the advice you got from that other engineer and
Okay.
see where it
Yeah.
overlaps. This is also my opinion.
Sure.
Maybe you like her opinion better on a certain particular topic, or maybe you try both out on different jobs, and then one gives you the results you want. So you could play with it, but this is what I think is generally a good idea on setting up that resume for a software engineering role.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, I can email it to you as well. But yeah, I post blogs and stuff like that pretty regularly, like once a week or so. So if you enjoy it, want to subscribe, feel free to share it, all that. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I actually just started reading more Medium articles, so I'm always looking for more articles to read. So I'll definitely subscribe.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for taking the time out, and I wish you the best with your search.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Chuma. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.